Good evening, everyone, and welcome along to this edition of SportsView on learmedia.tv. And don't forget to press the red button to subscribe to our channel. And thanks to all of you who've done so far. All the info at learmedia.tv for all your comments. Good evening, Martin Waters, and welcome again.
Thanks, Pat.
Good evening, Joe, and welcome.
Evening, Pat. Evening, Martin.
What was I going to say? We usually start off with soccer anyway, I suppose, but the Premiership is hotting up. One of my favourite players, not because he scored yesterday, I like watching him. I think he's a good-hearted player. That's Sacco from Arsenal. He did the business yesterday. They did the business, rather, Arsenal. And I think really they're looking good. They're looking good to me. Arsenal did. Liverpool had a shocker against Brighton, as we know. Man U are on the way up. That was a cracking win over City, you know. They had to win that match, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I think that really it solidified the team, you know, who are doing well. Chelsea, Newcastle, Southampton, and Notts Forest won as well, which I'd love to see him staying up, you know. Wolves and Brentford. Of course, tomorrow night we have who have we? We have Wolves and Liverpool tomorrow night, lads, in the replay of the Cup before we get into the Premiership. Joe, how do you see that going? Wolves and Liverpool tomorrow night in Molyneux.
Well, you know, it's going to be an interesting game. I mean, Liverpool are going to definitely be they're going to be smarting from the loss yesterday, and it just wasn't a loss. I mean, they were well beaten yesterday.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to come back and do something. And this may be the only trophy that they're going to win this year. So maybe they'll put all their eggs in one basket for that one, because it seems right now that it's going to be a real uphill battle to make the top four with the way things are going.
Yeah. And Martin, how do you see that going tomorrow night?
Well, I think Wolves have been very shrewd in who they've brought in to take the team. Their manager, who previously managed with Seville, and we all know what he did with Seville in relation to UEFA Cups and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, they have a good guy now steering the ship there at Wolves. He's got him playing in a certain way, a certain structure, well organised. They'll be difficult to break down. They mightn't be, I suppose, a team that's going to score many goals at the moment, but they are hard to score against. I know Manchester United went there in a league match recently, and it was a Rashford goal that won it for them in a match that really could have gone either way. And last weekend, they beat West Ham at home. So it's going to be a difficult fixture for Liverpool, that's for sure.
And they proved in the drawn match, you know, Wolves, they're very resilient, as you said. Now they're obviously, I'm just looking at the table here, they're down in 16th place there, or what? They're 2 points off the bottom three. They're in 16th place. Joint 16 with Leicester and Leeds and Forest. But I think, as you said, Martin, they're playing at home. Would you say they're favourites?
Sorry, is that for me, Pat?
Joe. Would you say they're favourites to beat Liverpool tomorrow night? Would they be worth the bet?
I think so. I mean, they're like Martin said, they've got a pretty solid team. They've got some fine players in that team, and like he says, you know, the manager is a good manager. He was manager at the Spanish national team. He was at Real Madrid, although it didn't work out well for him there. But he's very well respected in the game, and anytime you go to Molyneux, it's a tough place to go. It's a hard place to go and get a result.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't. If I was a betting man, I wouldn't mind putting a little bit of a wager on him.
Yeah, and of course we remember old fogies like Martin. You're a young fella. You wouldn't remember myself and Joe, the old folk like we are. We remember Derek Dugan, don't we, Joe?
Oh yeah, I mean the likes of Derek Dugan, John Richards, Mike Bailey, Phil Parks, all those, Frank Monroe, all those guys that were in that Bill McGarry team. I mean, terrific players. So they have a great history. Like a lot of clubs, they went through a little bit of a downturn there when they a few years ago, when the financial hardships hit everybody, and they got hit especially hard. But they've come back. They've got good ownership now and good investment. So I think that I think this is going to be a real tough game for Liverpool.
Yeah, and as you said, Liverpool will probably put all their eggs in that basket because realistically, it might be the only trophy that they'll be competitive for. Did you come across Derek Dougan when you were playing, Joe?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was actually he had just retired because he played for Leicester as well just before I got there.
Oh yeah.
And then he went to Wolves. But that Wolves team and the Derby team of the Clough Taylor era were always on Midland, ITV Midland for practically every weekend. Yeah. So I saw him at Leicester when he came to play there, and I saw him on TV a lot. I was interviewed a couple of times by him on TV. But Doug was a great guy, terrific player.
And Martin, of course, we have to come back to you. You're a Man U fan. Did you see the match?
I did, yeah. And, it was like a game of chess in the first half. It was, I suppose, the two chances were really United on the counter-attack with Rashford. City they had a lot of possession, but they didn't really create a whole lot. Second half, again, City lots of possession. Then they get the goal. Well-worked goal, if you watch it, the run De Bruyne made. I think it was, I'm not sure, was it? I'm not exactly sure who brought the full-back out, but it left that space for De Bruyne to move in, and he was played in, and Casemiro just couldn't get a tackle on him. De Bruyne got the cross in, and of course it was Grealish that was there to finish it, not Haaland. But and a great reaction from United though to actually equalise. Now, I suppose there's been a lot of talk about the goal, and whether Rashford was interfering with play or not, because he was offside and well offside. But I suppose the rules state that he didn't interfere with play.
Strictly speaking, he didn't participate in the play.
Yeah.
But is Haaland the one-trick pony? Is it easy to mark him now? Are they getting the grips with him?
Well, I watched, I think it was the game against Everton. And there was a guy, the centre-back with Everton, Godfrey. It was like reminiscent of a kind of an old-school centre-back marking a centre-forward where he absolutely was just almost, in his shorts. Yeah. He was so tightly marking him and was niggling him constantly through the game. And I suppose whatever it did, like, it really got under his skin. And there was a tackle that Haaland made, like, it probably could have been a red card. He actually got away with it when he made a tackle on the fullback. But since then, like, something is not right. He hasn't been playing well. He hasn't been scoring. No. He hasn't really been getting chances either.
And Joe, did you see that match, the United City match?
I did not. No, I was up at the canal, so I wasn't able to watch it. But just reading the papers and what have you, and the controversy. It's a funny thing. Brian Clough had his saying. Somebody asked him. He said he was offside, and Clough said he was offside, and the guy said, "Well, he wasn't interfering with the play." He said, "Well, if he's not interfering with the play, why is he on the field?" There's always something about it, It's I sometimes I look at this sometimes and I don't recognize the calls that they're making.
Yeah.
Because in my day, you score a goal from 30 yards, and it happened to me a couple of times. It flies in the top corner and your centre forward is 2 yards offside and the goal is disallowed.
We know Man City, I mean, to be foolish of anybody looking at soccer, I'm no expert, but to write Man City off just because there is 8 points behind Arsenal. I mean, they have the players. To me, they still have the squad, Martin, to make a goal, do you think?
Yeah, well, they have Arsenal to play, so I think, do they have him to play twice? Was the original game has to be refixed or something like that. So to have Arsenal to play twice,
they're playing. Sorry, man, for cutting across you. They're playing Spurs on Thursday in the Premier League.
Yeah, at home.
Yeah.
So you would expect a reaction, and in fairness to Tottenham, like they've been very inconsistent,
They're poor.
Something's not right with the back four. The goalkeeper looks as if he lacks a bit of confidence.
Yeah.
Since he's come back from the World Cup. He didn't play well yesterday. The first goal against Arsenal, really and truly, an international keeper shouldn't be letting that in.
That was shocker. It was a shocker.
It was a bit of a shocker, all right. And whatever about the second goal, the first goal was really poor. So Tottenham have huge issues at the back.
I thought, Martin, the second goal, he should have saved that as well.
You would expect he would.
He had loads of time to see it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And Joe,
he's not been playing well for a while, though. You will
No.
He's been struggling and making mistakes for a little while. But talking about Arsenal there, there's 5 or 6 games coming up. Yesterday being the first game against Tottenham, being the first one that's really going to test them, I think, to see if they're the real deal. Because after Tottenham, don't they have United?
United on Sunday, yeah.
They have Man United on Sunday, and Liverpool have Chelsea next at home in the league. But Arsenal, that'll be a good test for Arsenal, I think, at home. They'll be at home against Man United, and a good test for Man United as well. It
will, But you're talking about City there. In the last 3 or 4 years, about this time of the year, City started a run of 15, 16 games. And I think they may have lost one time in all of that. They won 12, drew 2, lost 1. So they're capable of putting a 15, 16 game run together and winning on a regular basis. And that's, when you've got the quality they've got, when they're playing Chelsea there last week and they beat them 1-0, and you bring Mahrez and Grealish off the bench.
Yeah.
160 million worth of talent sitting on the bench for you.
Yeah.
So they've got a really strong squad. And I think that they're well capable of doing that. And, when they've got City twice in that period, it's going to be Arsenal got City twice in that period. That's going to be a very, very, very interesting to see how it's going to play out.
I mean, Arsenal are 8 points. Obviously, 8 points is a sizable lead enough, lads, to make up. In fairness, And
but I mean, if they play City twice and they lose, that's down to 2 points. So all of a sudden,
or draw the 2 matches.
The nerves start playing a part in it, and Arsenal really have not shown that they're a team that can go the distance and put long runs together. Not yet, they haven't. I mean, they're undoubtedly talented. They're great to watch. They play some fantastic football. But it's going to be really interesting.
It'd be interesting as well if they can, maintain this, the squad depth doesn't look great. Like when you looked at the bench yesterday, you weren't looking at a whole lot of options for Arsenal, really. You Smith Rowe, who's back from a groin injury, who's potentially a guy that could fit in there in midfield. But, when you've Jesus out and he's out for a while, you've no real replacement, a striker as such. They've Nketiah there. Saka gets injured. He did get a slight knock against Oxford in the Cup. They thought he wouldn't make it this weekend. He did. So he probably is being nursed along. So he's another guy that could potentially have a knock in him. And he'd be a big loss in the right wing. So,
well, he would, yeah.
They don't seem to have cover at the back either. When you think of it, like the cover they have is Kieran Tierney at left back. So they don't seem to have a whole lot of cover at centre back.
Well, the only one they have at centre back is Rob Holding, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, funny enough, there's rumours in one of the headlines that one of the sports pages at the back of the Express or something that Harry Maguire is linked with Arsenal to go to Arsenal. I don't know how true that is.
Surprised.
To be honest, I wouldn't think that Harry Maguire fits the profile of an Arsenal centre back.
There's some agent probably put that story out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you, Martin. Is the strength and depth, I suppose, when you have a long season as well at Arsenal.
Yeah.
I mean, they have some fine players. Their first 14 or 15 players have some fine. But I'd say Arteta and the board must be aware of that as well, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, in the club.
I was surprised that they missed out on the Ukrainian guy. He seemed to be odds on to be going to Arsenal, from what I was reading and hearing, and to lose him to Chelsea in that short of a period just seems strange, you know. It really does. And I mean, if you're Chelsea, you've just signed Felix for, what was it, 10 million they paid for him or something like that, and now he's got a 3-match ban.
I know that's terrible. What's his name was on the way out of Chelsea? Oh God, forget his name. He plays for England up front. God, his name has gone out of my head.
Aubameyang?
No, the other fella. Forget from oh God, he's gone out of my head. Think of him later on. You know, there's rumours that he's leaving. Strong rumours that he's leaving. 2 or 3 of the sports pages took it there. I forgot to bring the piece with me. It's downstairs from where I'm sitting. But anyway, I'll think of him before the thing is up. The locally, Martin, just a bit of local soccer. Fairview Rangers just up the road, won 7-0 in the Junior Cup there against Villa United. And Ballinanty won 3-0 over the weekend. And Regional won 3-0 over the weekend in the local Junior Cup. So they're all flying. All the local teams are flying in junior soccer, you know. But we'll just move along we'll come back to soccer there in a couple of minutes, just cover more one. Rugby as well. We had some European Cup action over the weekend. Munster held on to win at home against Northampton. Yeah. Did anyone of you see that match?
I only saw the second half, and Munster were down to 14 men. They had O'Donoghue, I think it was sent off for a high tackle.
Yeah.
So, 14 men against the wind. I think they were playing in the second half. They were kind of backs to the wall stuff to hang on there. But in fairness, to the coach, he's shown a lot of courage, to, not afraid to leave out some of the big names, which hasn't been kind of like a thing that's happened in recent times with Munster. Yeah. So in fairness to Roundtree, I suppose he has a philosophy and he's sticking to it. And you got to give him credit for it, because it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Well, he left Conor Murray and Keith Earls out of the squad.
Yes.
They weren't even in the squad. They weren't even subs, Well, I mean, I don't think Conor Murray has it anymore anyway, I think he's still on the Irish squad, is he? Yeah. I find that very surprising. But anyway, that's just me. I'm not an expert in rugby. But they were leading 24-0 at half-time, Munster, Joe, in that match. And they got 3 points in the second half against Northampton. I mean, they did hang on. They looked uncomfortable. But as you said, when you're playing with 14 players over a long stretch, the exertions, everybody has to put in that extra effort. It does take its toll and the conditions as well. So I think they did well to hang on. Leinster, of course, had a win, and La Rochelle beat Ulster. Ronan O'Gara's team. 7-3 was the final score in that match. That was an absolute torrid muck affair,
Yeah. I know I turned it over. I just managed to stumble across it, and after 62 minutes, it was 0-0.
Yeah. So, the conditions were just appalling. La Rochelle didn't travel down with their full team either, not making excuses, And because the money is in the top 14 in France and rugby, that's where the big bucks are. We don't appreciate that here, but it's like the Premiership, in Britain. That's where the big bucks are in soccer. But Connacht beat Brive 61-5 in the European Challenge Cup, so that was a thumping win for them. But as I said, the ladies into provincials were on as well. I didn't see Munster won, and so Munster beat Leinster in that, so they seem to be more organised than the other provinces. That's Munster I'm talking about now. So they seem to have a bit more about them. And I don't know, did anyone really see the ladies into provincials over the weekend? I saw the highlights of two of them, but anyway. That was the rugby over the weekend. Of course, the Six Nations are coming up. The 4th of February, Ireland and Wales kick off, lads, in the Six Nations at home in the Lansdowne Road. I suppose everybody will be conscious now that this is World Cup year as well. And the bowl Eddie Jones is back with Australia, Martin. Did you see that?
I did, and it could be a great move for them. Like when you think of it, his record in World Cups, like he was. Did he coach?
I like Eddie Jones.
He coached Australia in 2003. Was it when they lost in the final to England? He coached England in 2019 when they lost in the final. He coached the previous World Cup today. He coached Japan, wasn't it? And they beat Ireland. I remember.
They did.
They got to a quarter final. So, in fairness, like you can't dispute the guy's record in World Cups. He has a good record. And he has coached the Aussies in the past, and they could potentially be playing England in the quarterfinals. So, what more do you want when you're an Australian to have England in your sights in the quarterfinal and a coach with a chip in his shoulder? Like you couldn't ask for more.
You remember the time when he was asked about Ireland? You remember that time a couple of years back, Joe, when Eddie Jones was asked, who? The disparaging remark that time, but I like characters, Joe, like Eddie Jones. You need characters in the game,
But you do, and I mean, half of these guys say things tongue in cheek anyway, so it's kind of, but I liked him as well. I liked some of his quotes and sound bites and what have you. So I always like the character in the game. But the funny one there, what about Farrell being able to play in the Six Nations?
I don't know. Go on.
But he's got a 3-match ban, and one of the matches, like he will not be involved. Like that Bristol game, he'll be in the English camp. So that's one of the games taken into account for that 3-match ban. So I suppose you realistically, like that game shouldn't be accounted for because he won't be in the squad for his club. He'll be in the English camp.
Yeah.
So I suppose like in a 3-match ban and go to tackle school, like that's like tackle school. Like come on, like this guy's been a professional now for a long time.
He has,
yeah. And then and part of the deal is that because of his past good behaviour, he gets a pat in the back for that. I mean, that guy has been throwing high tackles for as long as he's been playing,
and he's been spitting at players as well. He did in Lansdowne Road, but however, there's only one way to deal with people like that, and that's as was it Moskeen, make him eat a bit of grass on the field for a while, or something like that. Make him plough the field for a while. But I'm looking forward to the Six Nations anyway. Of course, Warren Gatland will be bringing Wales, Martin, here. Warren, back in the helm again. He knows all the Irish players intimately. Yeah,
and he gets a good tune out of Wales. Like he's proven that. So he's got them to a World Cup semi-final. So like like these guys are like it's panic stations in Wales and panic stations with Australia, but they've made some shrewd appointments.
They have, and I think Gatland would steady his ship, and I think Eddie Jones has the potential to steady his ship as well. And as I said, we never reached the semi-final of a World Cup yet in rugby, So Ireland, that is. So we have a lot to look forward to this year in rugby, SportsView is the program on learnmedia.tv. Tell all your friends about us and press the red button on the right-hand side to subscribe to our channel. Now, we were going to cover boxing, but Anna couldn't make it tonight. She was going to give us a rundown on the Elite Championships. And I, of course, in my wisdom, didn't take any notes for them because I presumed that she would be on the show. So apologies about that, lads. I can't fill anybody in on that. Judd Trump beat the ageless wonder, Mark Williams, in the Masters. I know that anyway, see the snooker over the weekend. And 10-8 to cracking final. I saw the last 4 or 5 frames of it. So it's pretty good. But Trump, fair play to him. He's tuning up nicely for the World Championships. Maybe he'll do it again. The Australian Open began this weekend as well in tennis, if anybody is interested. Nadal had his routine win today, and Nick Kyrgios pulled out today from the thing. Nick Kyrgios was due, if he had won, to meet Djokovic in the quarterfinals, which everybody was looking forward to, anybody who's interested in tennis, but that won't happen now. So it's looking like Djokovic-Nadal final. With all respects to Berrettini and all the rest of them, I don't know myself. Maybe there'll be a few surprises. Anyone of you interested to see any of the tennis?
I wouldn't watch it normally, to be honest with you. And the times of the matches wouldn't really work.
No.
If anybody's interested in getting a background into how these guys operate, there's a documentary on Netflix called Break Point.
I watched it.
Yeah, and that's reviewing. I suppose it starts with a review of the Australian Open last year, and guys like Berrettini and guys like Kyrgios, and I suppose it gives you a behind-the-scenes look at. Firstly, I suppose it's like golf, and if you're not in the top 50 in the world, you're not going to get the invites to these tournaments, and you're going to be struggling. And if you don't win your first round game, there's a lot of money at stake just to get past the first round.
There is.
So you can kind of understand the pressure, and there's a lot of tennis players out there that it's probably like any elite sport. There's such a fine line between the guys that win and the guys that lose. There was, it's so fine and delicate. It's almost like it's possibly not even physical. It's mental. It's between the ears.
Yes, that's an excellent documentary, Martin. Because though I not just see it yet, but to be worth to look, even irrespective of the sport, because I was very interested in looking at Taylor Fritz, for instance. He was the first American tennis player to win Indian Wells, which is sometimes referred to as the 5th major in tennis, Indian Wells. He was the first American to win in 20 years or something, And a very interesting character, Taylor Fritz, that is. And he beat Nadal. Was it Nadal in the final?
I think it was Nadal, yeah.
Yeah, 6-4, 7-5 or something, but in the final of Indian Wells last year. So he's another potential winner of the Australian Open, I don't know. Maybe we don't know. Raducanu from Britain, she's played with injuries and all, and her head seems to be right now. Oh, yeah, that documentary, there was one tennis player, he was knocked out early on. He had an 11-member team around him with physios and all. When he got knocked out in the first round, there was no money. He had to get through into the second round. Suddenly, he was down to one. His girlfriend and her mother. That was it. When the thing was over, because he didn't have the money to sustain that. The physios, the psychologists, whatever else, fitness trainer and all of that, coach. So, as Martin said, it's a tough business to be in, That's the Australian Open. It's on all this week in Eurosport for people who want to catch up as well. There's a highlights program as well. Joe, the NFL is coming to a crescendo tonight at our time tonight. Our man is in action tonight, Joe. Tom Brady. Tom Brady is in action tonight against who's he playing? Dallas, is it? Tampa Bay and Dallas tonight at 1:15 a.m. in the morning. I may have taken a bit of that now myself. Tampa Bay and Dallas, and they're down into the last 8. Next weekend we have Jacksonville and Kansas City. The New York Giants, they've been down for a good few years now, have they? And Philadelphia, the Giants, they haven't won the Super Bowl for how long?
Oh, the Giants won it when Eli Manning was the quarterback when they won it last time.
Was it?
Yeah, I think he won. Tom Coughlin was the coach. I think he won it. I think he won it twice in 3 or 4 years or something like that with the Giants. But they haven't been. Philadelphia, I think, won it. They won it 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, they're playing New York. They're playing New York Giants on Saturday, and also Jacksonville are playing Kansas City on Saturday. You know,
Kansas City are going to be tough to beat.
they're the favourites apparently to win it.
Yeah, they
And
are.
Sunday then we have Cincinnati and the Buffalo Bills. And the 49ers are around favourites as well. They're going very well. San Francisco.
Yeah, well, they beat up on the Seahawks yesterday. So
yeah, they'll be playing the winners of Dallas and Tampa Bay in that other match on Sunday. So, do you remember, was it Dan Marino? Was that the famous
Dan Marino was
49ers, was he?
That was Joe Montana was 49ers.
Joe Montana.
Montana was 49ers. Marino was
Miami Dolphins.
Miami. Yeah,
I remember
they played against each other in the '84 Super Bowl.
Yeah,
I think when San Francisco beat them in that. So going back a long time now, that one.
I remember Joe Montana was the first person that made an impression on me, because we wouldn't have had the coverage of this side of the Atlantic for a long time. You wouldn't see much of the NFL. It can be quite good, can be quite interesting, It's not everybody's cup of tea.
I don't watch much of it, but when I do tune in, like I tuned in last year and the year before, what struck me was the quarterback for Kansas. He's an exceptional player.
Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, he's just absolutely exceptional. Like his footwork, his speed of thought, his pass, he's just got it all, And I think the only reasons why I suppose they haven't won it more is because he's picked up injuries. And like last season, he just picked up a couple of knocks, and once he isn't firing, they don't fire,
Yeah.
I mean, you've got the position players around him as well, the receivers and the running backs. And it doesn't take much to throw him off, because it really is, a finely tuned machine when they're playing, and it only takes one of your top guys to get injured and be performing at less than 100%, and it can make a huge difference to you. A huge difference. I think, I'm trying to think of which game it was, but there was one game where I think they played. I think they played Buffalo, and it was like a shootout. I mean, one would get a touchdown, the other one would get a touchdown, the other one would get a touchdown, and they just kept matching each other. And went into overtime, and I think Kansas City won it in the finishing overtime. But
they won that match, I think, 34-31.
Yeah.
If memory serves me right, that match. But Kansas City and the 49ers would be the two hot teams in it, would they?
Yeah, I think that they're probably the two best ones that are. And Kansas City are a bit of a surprise package, because they lost their starting quarterback at the beginning of the season. I think the second game, and they have a guy called Jimmy Garoppolo there, who they got from New England. He was Tom Brady's backup in New England, and they got Jimmy Garoppolo to be the quarterback of the future, and it didn't work out for him. He got injured. I think he blew his knee out, and then they in the draft last year they took a quarterback, and this kid was the future of the franchise, and they wanted Garoppolo gone. They didn't even want him in the building on training days. So he was such a bad influence, and they ended up having to use him for the first couple of games. Then he got injured, and now they've got the third choice quarterback in there. So they've done really well with what they've got going on.
Now, as we said a couple of weeks back, I think, I don't know whether you want or not, Joe, the Super Bowl is on in Arizona this year, the Super Bowl. And I think Joe might be trying to get a couple of tickets for SportsView. I don't know yet. Does he know any connections?
Well, I have a couple of guys that know a couple of guys that know a couple of guys. So hopefully so. Yeah. I mean, this thing is absolutely ridiculous. When the Seahawks got there a few years ago, and then a couple of years before that, Denver got it. there were people renting their homes out for 10 grand a week.
Go away.
In the lead up to the Super Bowl.
Go away.
They all took off on vacation and rented their houses out. Oh. That's how big it was. It was the same when we had the US Open here down at Chambers Bay a few years ago. People were renting their houses out.
Well, you have the same here, I say, Martin, dare say, for the Ryder Cup in Adare Manor, you know?
It's already starting. It's
already started, yeah. It is. Yeah. The Ryder Cup will be here in Adare Manor. Also in golf, the weekend gone, they had a tournament between Great Britain and Ireland versus continental Europe called the Hero Cup. That was just to look at players that they might be considering for the Ryder Cup. So Europe beat them 14.5 to 10.5. Seamus Powell and Lowry from Ireland were playing in that match, you know. They did reasonably well. They were unlucky. They were beaten in 3 of their games that they played in on the 18th hole. So they acquitted themselves pretty well. The reason I mentioned the Sony Open is I was speaking to someone before and they said, this man from Korea would be worth the bet. Now, I'm not a gambler. I don't get the bookies, but I looked up the price he was. I think it was 40 to 1. And I said, no, I never heard of him. But he won the Sony Open the weekend. If you're listening tonight, let us know when you're playing again. Siwoo Kim was the man, minus 18. He won $1.42 million for his trouble in the Sony Open. But fair play to him, he won it by a stroke. But there you go. One never knows, you know. But that was the golf. I suppose we do look forward to the Ryder Cup as well. You know, there's no doubt about that. We'll come back to soccer before we finish up, lads. And as I said, Wolves and Liverpool tomorrow night. I think every game now for Liverpool from now till the end, not picking on them hard, because of the size of the club, because of the traditions and all of that behind them, I think it's going to be a huge, huge struggle for them tomorrow night. Joe, what do you think? We'll have a final word on it tomorrow night.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, the form that they're in right now, the injuries. I mean, I'm watching the highlights of the game this morning, and Harvey Elliott, who's a young kid at Liverpool, is the only Liverpool player that's played in every game this year. That tells you where you are in terms of injuries and what have you, and that usually ends up meaning that you're inconsistent and what have you. But a young kid is the only one that's played in every game this season. Usually you'd have 5, 6, 7 guys that played in every game up to now. But so they're going into a tough place, and Wolves are going to be flying after the result they got against West Ham. So it's I think it's going to be a real tough game for them.
And Martin, a fine word on the Liverpool match tomorrow night. Is he under severe pressure now?
Well, they're under pressure because they haven't been playing well. Their last 2 away games, like the last 3-1 away to Brentford and the last 3-0 away to Brighton. So, and their last home game was Leicester, and they won 2-1, and it was 2 own goals from Leicester that kind of like presented them with that victory.
That's true.
You know, so
I've forgotten about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you think of it like Leicester. If you look at Leicester's first goal that night, like absolutely, like it was like the Suez Canal down the middle of the Liverpool defence for their first goal, where the guy ran from the midfield and just cruised through, and they were unlucky not to score a second one. So there are big issues, and it's like to me, it's just miles on the clock. You know, like there are a lot of guys playing a lot of football, a lot of the style of football that they play. You know, it really is a high intensity, and it has been for a number of years across multiple competitions.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just the league; it's the European Cup. It was European Cup. It was every cup. It was everything. And I think it's kind of come to a crescendo now, where a lot of them have reached.
But Martin, what you're talking about there is absolutely right. That's how they train as well.
Yeah,
they train exactly the same way as they play. So it's not just the games that are high intensity. It's the training sessions as well that they're playing at 100 miles an hour. And eventually, I mean, like Martin is saying there's just like miles on legs there. And there's a lot of older guys in that team. You know, you look at Fabinho's early 30s. Van Dijk is early 30s. Oxlade-Chamberlain, how old is he? He's got to be up there now as well.
Henderson.
The Spaniard that they have there.
Henderson.
Yeah, Henderson's another one that's got miles on him. Matip has got to be up there. You know, so if you're going to play, and this is what happened to Klopp at Dortmund as well. When they lost to, I think it was Barcelona. Was it Barcelona or Bayern they lost to in the Champions League?
Yeah, lost to Bayern, yeah.
Yeah, and then they never recovered from that.
Yeah.
You know, and when you play a high intensity game like that and train like that, you've got to be moving bodies all the time.
You do. And I think I know 3-0 can be a hammering, but 3-0 may not be such a bad result if the team is playing well, but they were really hammered. I mean, they were hammered soccer-wise, Martin, by Brighton. Brighton looked like the Real Madrid. And no, they're not disparaging towards Brighton because they are a very, very well and very good structured, organised team to take a hell of a team to beat Brighton 3-0, you know. But they just ran through Liverpool. Yeah,
and like if you look back on last season, like Liverpool brought City to the final game of the season, you know, like, and I think, you know, like, I'm not, Joe be better placed than me now, but like to go the distance and lose the league on the last day, and then to come out and play a Champions League final and lose that as well. And I thought it was a phenomenal achievement to actually do that, you know, to actually, you know, I thought last season they were kind of running on hot air a bit, but they managed to still get there and get to, you know, brought the league to the final stage, got to the Champions League final, lost to Real Madrid. And I just think like just like some of this just the air has gone out of the balloon now. I just think Liverpool, you know, they need a bit of a, they probably need a bit of a rebuild, especially in midfield.
And tomorrow and Wednesday night, Martin, as you're talking, your favourite team is playing at home in Old Trafford. They're playing Crystal Palace.
Crystal Palace, yeah. So again,
another 3 points.
Well, look, if they're to maintain what they're doing, like, they have to win. You know, like it's a case now of keeping the momentum going, I suppose. You know, like the last thing you need is to drop. You know, like a draw or a defeat now would be a kind of a real kick in the teeth after beating City at home. You know, so it's you know, they just need to keep the momentum going and seeking the 1-0. That's all it needs. You know, like it doesn't have to be spectacular.
Joe, before you come in, the player I was thinking of was Raheem Sterling.
Yeah,
I couldn't think of. And Chelsea are going to offload him apparently. I don't know. It's supposed to be done.
Wow. I hadn't heard that one that he might be going. So
that's the man. There's huge speculation about him. But tomorrow night, Joe, Wednesday night, we have Man United and Crystal Palace in Old Trafford. That'll be a good win for United, do you think?
I mean, Crystal Palace are a tough team to play against. They are a very tough team to play against. And Patrick Vieira he's got them flying, and they've got some dangerous players up front. But like Martin says, you know, if United are to be taken seriously, these are the kind of games that they have to win. You know, you've just got to win these, and then you've got to get the results against the Cities and the Arsenals as well as you're going. So,
I mean, if United wins the night against Palace, I know it's all speculation, and they beat Arsenal on next Sunday, I mean, that would be some phenomenal 3 games for them.
Yeah.
You know,
it would. And that's the way United used to be. You know, under Ferguson, that's what they were like. They'd win those games, and that's what made them as good as they were. So,
you look at a team like, you look at a club like Man United, still a huge club worldwide as well, and then you look at the bags of it that Solskjaer and those managers made of it. Now it's plain to me that Ten Hag has won the club, has got the dressing room on hand, Why couldn't like Savali Gunnar Solskjaer have done that with the same team more or less? You know, why couldn't he do that, Martin? Do you think was it a
Well,
flaw?
I think there was a flaw above him, like as well.
Yeah,
you'd Woodward there, who hadn't the buzz notion about soccer. He was a stockbroker. Like making financial calls more about it was more about profit than player. So
right.
and then with Joe mentioned earlier, you kind of then have all these signings, which are signings where you sign someone like Sanchez because he might go to City. You sign someone like Maguire because he might go to City. There's no plan. There was no plan. There never
Yeah,
seemed to be a plan. It was always, and like now at least there seems to be a plan. He brings in Martinez because he wants a left-footed centre back to play alongside Varane, so that the angles he can open up being left-footed are more preferable. It allows him to move the ball quicker. It's kind of sounds like common sense, which it is, but why
it
haven't they done
is.
that in the last 5 or 6 years? Like it's just
And
beyond
you know,
belief.
another thing struck me. As I said, I'm not an expert in the game, but Bruno Fernandes seems to be a different player altogether now.
Well, he has since Ronaldo went out the door.
Yeah,
He's allowed, I suppose, playing in a more advanced position, and I suppose like it really helps when you have a guy behind you that's won something like 5 Champions Leagues and God knows how many
yeah,
Spanish titles in Casemiro,
yeah,
who has been like just phenomenal.
yes, yeah,
He's just
yeah.
absolutely phenomenal. Like, and I suppose we haven't seen as much of him unless you watch Spanish football. We have only seen him in Champions League football, really. So,
He's a good player. He's a
but like
good
he
player.
is phenomenally good.
He is.
Like it's just different class.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Joe. So it's all rosy in the garden for Man United, Joe, is it?
Well, I mean, it is right now, but I will say this much that, the signing of Varane and Casemiro has made night and day difference and Martinez. Some people are calling him out and saying, I think Graham Souness said it one time. He said, "Show me a 5'8" centre back."
Mm.
Well, Cannavaro won the World Cup as a 5'8" centre back for playing for Italy. So there's players that have a skill set, and that's obviously what Tanag is bringing in. Like Martin says, he wants a left-footed guy. The guy can play. He's quick. He's hard as nails, and he can play. And I think United's biggest failing is in goal.
Yeah,
they need a new goalkeeper.
They do absolutely. Now, before we finish up, lads, I know Joe might have, but Martin, we had a few warm-up pre-GA tournament games with the McGrath Cup and the Waterford Crystal League. We had 2 experimental teams between Cork and Limerick. Yes, Cork shaded them by a point, and Cork and Limerick are meeting in the football final, actually, in the McGrath Cup, and Cork and Tip are meeting in the Waterford Crystal final in the hurling league. But obviously there's not going to be too much read into these games, but nevertheless it's a nice warm-up. Did you know anything about why Gillan isn't in the team? You didn't hear anything, no?
No, I didn't, and I didn't see anything about the game at all yesterday. I was actually I was watching the Club All Ireland final between it was like like I got Joe remember junior football, junior GA football, so it's generally like it's there's some clubs that would only have junior teams and all that. So it'd be more.
Junior football was you get the man first and then you get the ball after.
Yeah, but it's generally not a game that would be televised,
No.
But like yesterday, like you've 2 guys that played in the Kerry All Ireland team, the 2 Cliffords.
Lionel Messi of the GA I was talking about now.
So like David Clifford is playing with a junior club, and David Clifford, I think he won everything. He's won everything that he's been involved in this year, apart from the Singerson Cup.
Yeah.
But he won everything else. He got Player of the Year and Man of the Match in the All Ireland final. And he was playing yesterday for his club Fossa, which is just outside Clarny, and they were playing a team from Tyrone called Stewartstown Harps.
Yeah.
And the game was finally balanced going into the last couple of minutes. I think the clock was on about 55 minutes, and before, between the last 5 minutes and 5 minutes of injury time, there was a 6 players sent off. There was 4 from the Tyrone club, and the 2 Cliffords were sent off as well.
But the point about it I was making today, and I contributed to something else today, was that the referee and the officials, David Clifford is the Lionel Messi of Gaelic football. Absolutely a sensational talent. And the appalling stuff that went on against him, from time the ball was thrown in till it was over.
Yeah.
And you have 2 umpires at each side of the field, 2 linesmen and a referee, and not one of them took any action. No. They gave 1 player a yellow card, all right, for such a blatant tackle. He should have got a black card. It was appalling what went on.
The tackle on Clifford's brother was dreadful. The elbow dreadful, to the mouth. Yeah.
Dreadful altogether, Yeah. And the referee put off the 2 Cliffords when the match was over.
Yeah.
And those red cards will be rescinded. There's no doubt in my mind. But that referee should never, in my opinion, get a match again under GA rules. It was just appalling. I mean, in soccer, during any game, the referee's primary duty is for the protection of the players on the pitch.
Right.
And these players have jobs to go to in Gaelic games, And to me, Monaleen, of course, or not Ratmore. It was a Kelly double yesterday, Martin, in Cork.
Yeah, Ratmore won the second game, the intermediate final. They beat another club from Tyrone.
They did double. They had 2-2.
Whilst Monaleen won the intermediate hurling final on Saturday night, they beat a team from Mayo, Turin.
Turin, it's a hotbed of hurling in Turin.
Yeah, they beat them by 2 points, I think, in the end.
Yeah, 117 to 115. Yeah, that's right. And Ballygiblin, just outside Mitchelstown, Joe, we're doing a geography thing tonight. Ballygiblin won the junior hurling All-Ireland final.
Yeah.
They were in it last year as well, but they lost. But they won it this year. They won it well against a team from Roscommon.
Sligo, was it?
Sligo, Roscommon. I know which, but they did well. So, all in all, I mean, we're looking forward to the National Hurling League and the first match, of course. I mean, Limerick are going to Cork in the first match in the Hurling League. So I don't know what kind of teams they have. We're looking forward to it. But just get back to Tom Brady. We'll wish him the best of luck tonight in Tampa, and we look forward to him next weekend. So we have to hang on to something,
Oh yeah.
Joe, by the way, just to get a small bit political, you haven't any of those papers in your house. They seem to be finding all these files and folders in Joe Biden's different houses around the country. You don't have any in your basement by any.
He left a couple of them in my shed. I have to go out and look for them.
It's been a blast.
I didn't know there was that many secret papers out there. Honest to God.
Oh, please! It's never ending, is it?
Oh, I tell you, it's absolutely unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I tell you, politics in this country. I swear to God.
Yeah.
It just. My wife has to have a word with me every now and again because I'm shouting at the TV.
Of course, you'd shout at the TV, Martin, you don't have a basement, do you?
No.
You're
not
lucky.
Yet, anyway. They give me planning permission to dig down, so
you're off the hook. So lads, from Joe Waters, from Martin Morris, and myself, till we meet again next Monday night, Lacoon of Day, from this edition of SportsView. Good night, take care, and God bless, lads.
Good night, lads.
Bye.